Welcome to the NerdLore podcast, where we talk stories, theories, and lore. I'm one of your three hosts, Shiny Shoes.
And I'm Crashstarling.
And it's your boy, TheRealSkandle.
And today, we're going to be discussing Egyptian gods and the stories surrounding them. So, I think Crashstarling is going to lead us off.
That's right. So okay. So he said Egyptian, and I know what you're thinking. You're like, Starling, how could you possibly fuck this up? And I'm like, how? I was looking through like a long list of all the Egyptian gods, and my first thought was Slifer the Sky Dragon's not on here. This is a travesty. Secondly, I found this one where the name just stuck out to me called Ishtar. And I was like, oh, okay, Ishtar. Let's look into this. So I found a couple of stories, but first I want to introduce that Ishtar actually has Mesopotamian origin. It's a goddess from Mesopotamia. So I was like, why is this on the list? And we'll get to that. But I'm going to introduce a little bit about Ishtar here, which is Ishtar is the goddess of war and sexual love. She has a counterpart of the West Semitic goddess Astarte. I was like, okay. And then has relations to the mother is Ningol. I'm going to butcher all these names. I'm so sorry. Father is Nana. Say my name.
Nana.
It's spelled Nana.
Oh, it's got to be Nana, right? Nana.
Make him say,
And then we've got sister, which is Ereshkigal. I'm so sorry. Which is queen of the underworld, apparently, in Mesopotamian origins. And then a twin brother, which is Utu, the solar deity connected to the concept of justice. And I was like, okay, clean. If I can't get Ishtar to work, I might come back to Utu. So you see depictions of Ishtar as either a beautiful woman or as an anthropomorphic with, I think, wings is a lot of the depictions, like in the hieroglyphics. She is the origin of many cults and future goddesses such as Aphrodite, which I found extremely interesting. And then in other interpretations, she is known as an astral deity associated with the planet Venus. Her symbol is a hook-shaped knot of reeds, an 8-pointed star, a lion, a rosette, and a dove. And what she is known for is some of the earliest stories, I think, in human history, and one of the earliest love stories in human history, if not the earliest, from what I read. The first one is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which I think is one of the oldest known stories. I cannot confirm that, but I read that in a couple of places. And the second one is known as Ishtar's Descent into the Netherworld. So in Ishtar's Descent into the Netherworld, the exact reasoning is kind of unknown for this, but this is the original love story. The two main ones that I found were to gain power from her sister or the underworld, kind of like an ambitious quest to just gain more power as a goddess. And the second one was to recover the soul of Tammuz, which apparently, after I read for about a couple hours, is a god of the river in some interpretations. And he was slain by raiders, so apparently he was not a very strong god. I wrote an entire note here, so I'm just going to be reading this out as I wrote it. So, Ishtar's journey to the underworld in search of power and is killed by her sister. Her place as goddess is left vacant, and through the cunning moves of the god of wisdom, EA, it's in the game, Nishbar is able to rescue her from the underworld. Her place in the underworld must be filled as well, so her consort, Tammuz, is chosen. But for half a year, he is able to return to the world by replacing his spot with his sister, and through this is able to ascend into godhood. He becomes the dying and reborn god of agricultural fertility. So there was quite a few interpretations of this, and from what I found, she's one of like the most complicated goddesses because of all the different interpretations. Like, she represents complete opposites of the spectrum. There's contradictory connotations of and forces. Like, she's the goddess of fertility, and let's see, I'm trying to read through. She's the goddess of fire and fire quenching, rejoicing in tears, fair play and enmity, words. And I found the more I read about this, the more this goddess really just kind of felt like a stronger human. Like she felt more human the more I read. Like she went through betrayal, she went through grief, she went through a lot of human characteristics, which is why really it was way more fun to read than I officially thought. My first thought was this just was going to end up being a book report, but it turned into like, oh, I actually vibe with this. So I'm going to roll back, and you're thinking to yourself, Sean, this is a Mesopotamian god. What does this have to do with Egypt? Well, they literally just said Egyptian. So from what I was looking into it, and apparently from what there's also interpretations that Ishtar prefigures some of the other stories that kind of involve a female goddess and their male lover dying, and then they have to go to the underworld to save him. So from that, I think, let's see, I'm reading through it. Some people believe that Ishtar and the Egyptian god Isis are one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
They have similar hieroglyphs. They have exact, almost parallel stories, and they kind of align in what they are and like what they represent as goddesses. But Ishtar has so many different interpretations, and she has influenced so many different mythologies. Like there are just almost like clones of Ishtar. So let's see if I have anything else. Fun notes. There are several characters featured in anime known as Ishtar, such as Yu-Gi-Oh!, Fate's Day, which I have never seen, and Persona. And I've thought to myself, of course, the one goddess that seemed interesting to me was the anime one. Thank you. Yes, I can't escape it. No.
Would you like to know something else that's really interesting about Ishtar?
Yes, I would.
So, the holiday Easter, the reason that we do eggs, like, yeah, it's about Christ's rising from the dead, right? The reason you do eggs is because Ishtar, the goddess of fertility, and that's why they got the name Easter from Ishtar, and that's why they celebrate with eggs, is because it was a fertility holiday.
I actually brought up on that, and some people do believe that, and other people think it's from a German word, which is esoter or something.
Yeah.
But it's one or the other, and yeah, that is it. It's the origin of fertility is from Ishtar.
Yeah.
I like that you went with a Mesopotamian god. I myself,
Guys, it was Egyptian.
went with an Egyptian god. I followed the rules and did it the right way, I think.
I was like, I wanted to go for something like, oh, look at this. This goddess is all over here in Mesopotamia, but oh, could it be this actually?
So this is why we can't have nice things.
Now,
you can't follow right.
Yeah.
I don't know
rules.
about you guys, but when I was looking up gods for this, one, the stories in Egyptian mythology are wilder than almost any video game stories I've ever been a part of. Like they were silly. Also, it's like there isn't a set guideline of what the gods are actually the gods of.
Mm-hmm.
So Sobek, some people are like, yeah, he's a fierce protector. Also, he's the god of the Nile and a whole mess of things. He's the god of medicine. He's the god of fertility, and all the other gods are also gods of these same things, which was kind of confusing to me. But Sobek is who I'm going to talk about, and he's been depicted a couple different ways. The most recognized way is as a crocodile's head on a human's body. But also he's been shown as just a big old crocodile. He's been shown as a human body with like a hawk head or something crazy. Gajillion different ways he's shown, but the most accepted is him with a head, crocodile head. Now, Sobek, one thing that everybody kind of agrees on with Sobek is that my boy is very instinctual. So, you know, you gotta get it in when you get it in. If you're hungry, you gotta eat. He does what comes to him naturally. So that's one of the ways why he's seen as that god of fertility, because they're like, yo, crocodiles, they like to, you know. So they kind of worship that.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Trust.
When you say you know and nobody knows what you're talking about.
I winked too.
I know I did.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, just remember that. So another thing, when it first first started out, Sobek was kind of a lower god, but he's in the very first religious text that they can find from Egypt. So he's from that far back. Now, as his popularity grew, it moved out of Old Egypt and moved into the time of what they call Middle Egypt. That's when Sobek cult really started to take off. Now, they were centered in this city called like Shinar, which translates to Crocodilopolis.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. It's Crocodilopolis, which when I heard that, I was like, that is the greatest name for a city. So even more so Crocodilopolis, they were a bunch of Sobek worshiping cult people. They had one big crocodile that lived there that they said his name was like, it wasn't Bastet, but I was like Buffet. I tried to say it like 40 times, but I couldn't. So this crocodile was known as the son of Sobek, and this dude pretty much it lived in like a little lived in the city, and it stayed by the river, and they fed this thing like milk and honey, fine wines, meats, and they adorned this dude in like jewels and fancy metals.
Was it a van down by the river?
And well, it was probably a really big crocodile. It was considered an honor to get eaten by the crocodile because then you were known as divine, and they would have like a whole funeral for you if you were eaten by the crocodile, where they would mummify you and then they would take your remains and like entomb them. So that was evidently cool to just get eaten by a giant crocodile. Eventually that crocodile died and they just replaced it with another one. So, my boy.
That's a Middle Egyptian PetSmart. I'm like, hey, which crocodile?
So listen, these people loved crocodiles like cat ladies love cats. So crocodiles were pretty much, they were the deal back then. And people used to keep crocodiles as house pets. Like, how dope would that be? You're like, oh, gotta go walk the crocodile, and then it eats you, and then like slithers back into the river. But they found a bunch of burial sites of crocodiles like dressed up in like jewels and stuff like that, and they mummified them with their like children on their back because that showed how nurturing they were. So Horus is another god. Horus had 4 kids. Sobek's claim to fame, he's really got 2 things in his lore that really talk about Sobek. Sobek's claim to fame was Horus's 4 children were birthed in a lotus petal in the middle of a river or something like that, and they were drowning. So Sobek grabbed the net and he was like, yo, get them out of there. And he took them to the shore, and that's what everybody thinks give him his godliness. But your boy Sobek, also very instinctual, a certain other god got cut up by a dude named Set and thrown in a river.
Yep.
And then Sobek was like, oh shit, I'm not gonna let them body parts go to waste, dog. And he swam down there and he ate them. And then he got punished, so they cut his tongue out because he's like, stupid crocodile, you can't be eating deities. And that's why in Egyptian like pictographs and pictology, you don't see crocodiles with tongues because they are not seen with them. Sobek's parents was Set and Neith. Neith is another really dope Egyptian god as well. And that's most of what I learned about Sobek. It was interesting. He's the dude in the house. Also, I think a lot they were thinking about was kind of off. It was told that Sobek was birthed the Nile by his sweat, but like lizards don't sweat, right? Like amphibians, they don't sweat, so they.
You're the National Geographic expert here.
Yeah,
crocs going like no.
Yeah, they like to, but they don't sweat, so they're just off there. But that's what I know about Sobek.
Okay. All right. Well, here's what's really interesting. I went last, not for any specific reason, but we're going to tie all this together because the dude I'm going to talk about is none other than Osiris. So, Osiris was one of the first gods born from. Let's see if I get these names right because I'm going to butcher this worse than your boy over there. He's the firstborn of the gods Geb, and I believe it's Newt, because I just don't feel like nut is the right word for a female.
Yeah, it is.
So, because he was the firstborn, he was given rule over Earth and humans. And through Osiris, while he was the god, it prospered. Everybody was equal, and there was plenty of agriculture. There was plenty of wealth to go around. Everybody was happy, and everybody was healthy. He's depicted as having black or greenish skin, and that's to portray the mud, like the nurturing mud and things that allow things to grow, because he was the god of agriculture. But tell me if you've heard this story before. Somebody's little brother got jealous and killed him. That is from another story, some other mythology stuff that most of you are probably more familiar with. Anyway, so Set is his brother, kills him, right? And I mean, I want to make sure I get the story right. So hold on, I want to make sure. I gotta get back to my notes here. I apologize. Oh, okay, yeah. So the way he did this was Set. Set built a coffin that was the exact measurements of Osiris, and then at a party that they were throwing, told people whomever would fit best in this coffin would receive. Make sure I get this. It was just a gift. I thought it was going to tell me some specifics, but it was just a gift. And so everybody tried, and then whenever Osiris got in there, he fit in there, and Set slammed the door, bolted it shut, and threw it out the river. And he eventually ended up lodging himself into a tree, and the tree grew, and it was massive and beautiful. And this ruler cut the tree down and put it in his little castle thing. So Isis, or Ishtar, if you will, was Osiris's sister and also his wife. Things were different back then.
Yeah, it's very common in all the lore I was reading.
Yeah. So she pretends to be this old woman and enters the city that this tree is now inside of. And she's welcomed there, and she's given the right to be the maids for their child. Well, she believed that he would transcend if she were to be able to immerse him in fire. Well, as she was about to do it, the king and queen saw her and yelled and found out, trying to figure out what was going on. So it was then that she revealed who she was and how, that she was this main goddess. And so they begged for their life, and she said, I'll spare your life. All I want is the tree. So they agreed. She took the tree. She went back to Egypt, and there she did some mummification. And this is the first time mummification was a thing, and with some other rituals, she was able to bring him back to life. And then Set found out about it, and so then he kills Osiris a second time, and this time he chops up all of his body parts and dumps them all over Egypt. And again, Isis goes out and finds all the body parts. They were able to find all of them except for the penis, and that was said to have fallen into the water that was eaten by a fish, not a crocodile, but it was a fish, and that's why that specific fish is forbidden to be eaten in Egypt to this day, or it's not, or it was for a long time. I don't know if it still is to this day.
Penis fish.
The penis fish. Yes. Yeah. So again, Isis finds, with the help of Set's wife, God, I'm gonna butcher this name. Nephthys, I think. Anyway, they find all the body parts. She brings them back to life again. But now he is the god of the underworld because he's been reanimated. And so that's where mummification started out, was because of Osiris and the rituals. So it's common practice for you to see, or back then to see people get put into mummification if you had the money, and then try to have women woe and be saddened by your death, and that was supposed to allow you to be an immortal and transcend into the underworld forever. But yeah, that's the story of Osiris.
It's weird how all these Egyptian gods hang out with each other and they're all homies and they're all eating body parts in the river.
Mm-hmm. They're all related.
Yeah, they're all related. It's a different time. It's a different time.
Ancient Alabama.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we had to do the same thing. We had to do the same thing from Adam and Eve, and then from Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, right? Like,
I guess that's probably true. But none of them had a crocodile head, so once they get that,
gods represent. Try to fight them.
Yeah, you're not going to. So. This has been NerdLore Podcast over mythology. What mythology would you like to see? What mythology would you like to hear about? This is Shiny Shoe signing off.
Crashstarling signing off.
The real Skandle, baby.
See you guys next time.